if you started playing Magic in the past year or so and you're still playing it today, then you can take a little bit of pride in knowing that you might not have experienced Magic at its best, but you definitely experienced it at its worst. Now, even if you have no idea anything about Magic the Gathering, and for some reason this is the first video that you clicked on or the first introduction to it, it doesn't take a genius to say, hey, we took the biggest playing card game, trading card game of all time, and combined it with one of, if not the most popular superhero of all time, and made an entire universe combining those two factors. The normal everyday person will go, yeah, I bet that was a smash hit. How did you guys mess that up? Well, they messed it up. The Spider-Man set is probably the worst Magic set that's ever existed. We're not going to talk about today why it would be the worst or why it is possibly the worst. But we're going to talk about a gem in the rough that I really enjoyed from this set. And no, we're not going to be talking about Green Goblin today. I think Green Goblin kind of took the spotlight for Commander decks. Rightfully so. Every time a Grixis Commander comes out, people talk about it because of all the potential. And Green Goblin had a lot of cool graveyard stuff. We're not talking about that. We are talking about my favorite in the Bob Ross Ultra Pro box. Let's crack this open. So we are going to be talking about Eddie Brock, or more popularly, his flip side Venom. So here is Venom. His front side, is Eddie Brock, a 3-mana legendary human hero villain. We don't really care about this guy. We're pretty much only focusing on Venom. So Venom is 6 mana for a 5/5 with Menace, Trample, Haste. And whenever he attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do draw X cards, then you may put a permanent card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, where X is the sacrifice creature's mana value. So his colors are black, red, and green, which is Jund. And for the most part, we are focusing on Jund, good stuff, just doing what you want to be doing in the colors. So our main game plan is to be ramping up the first turn or 2 or 3, playing Venom, sacrificing a bunch of creatures to draw a bunch of cards to cheat out some creatures that are good value engines, and then repeat the process. And that's pretty much it. This is a bracket 3 deck. I think the only game changer I have in here is I have Necropotence. I do not remember if one game changer makes it a bracket 3. But yeah, I do have a Necropotence in this deck. I had more game changers in it, and I took them out because didn't think it was fun to be so strong, because this deck does not need them. It does not need them. So an important thing to note about this deck is that Venom says draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's mana value. Not power, not toughness. So I feel like a lot of these kind of sack outlet decks, you're more kind of fashioned to be looking at power and toughness instead of mana cost. So our main goal is to cheat out some very expensive creatures and then sacrifice them to Venom before they go away or whatever state action happens. Drawing a bunch of cards and then going off of that. So we play Venom. We have a couple of ways to cheat out creatures like that. So maybe one of the more popular big creatures, in fact I think 15 is the biggest creature, Shadow of Mortality. So this creature costs 13 generic mana and 2 black mana. And if your life total is less than your starting life total, the spell costs X less to cast, where X is the difference. So if we get something like Crick or Necropotence or Necrodominance, I think is in this deck, we can lower our life total really low. In fact, 13 less. And then we can play this 7/7 for 2 black mana, which is normally really good as it is. But because Venom cares about its mana value, if I cast this for 2 black mana in my first main phase, and then I go to combat and I attack with Venom and sacrifice Shadow of Mortality, I will draw 15 cards, and then, so I'll attack with Venom, I'll get a trigger, I will sacrifice a creature, I'm going to sacrifice Shadow of Mortality, I will draw 15 cards equal to his mana value, and then I will put a creature with 15 mana value or less from my hand onto the battlefield. So 15 cards can be a lot on turn 4 or 5 of the game if you can manage to get it out. And at that point, you're pretty much guaranteed to find what you're looking for. We also have things like Infantry Shield to create a lot of tokens. Scoot Swarm can get out of hand really fast. I have several cards in here that let me play multiple lands per turn. Sowing Micah Spawn, having a land tutor is really nice. Professional Facebreaker is a good classic red card. Create some treasure tokens. Solemn Simulacrum is really fun in this deck because for 4 mana I can resolve its ETB, search my library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, sacrifice it to Venom to draw 4 cards. When it dies, I'll draw an additional card, and then resolving Venom, I can put a different 4 mana or less creature from my hand onto the battlefield, which could be Professional Facebreaker, which could be Sowing Micah Spawn, which could be Scoot Swarm. And the other thing is that Venom says put a permanent card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield. So it doesn't have to be Professional Facebreaker. It could be a Talisman. It could be a Riveteer's Ascendancy enchantment. It could be a Fierce Empath creature, and then when it enters, I'll search my library for a creature card, mana value 6 or more, and I'll choose Phytotitan, or I'll choose one of the millions of options that I have. There's my Necropotence. Psychosis Crawler is my favorite card of all time. And if I have Psychosis Crawler on the battlefield and I sacrifice my Shadow of Mortality to draw 15 cards, now not only do I get 15 cards, I get to put basically anything from my hand that is a permanent onto the battlefield, and I deal 15 damage to each creature to resolve, each player to resolve Psychosis Crawler. We have Blood Artist, in case I need to sacrifice stuff. The main ways that we're looking at winning are either very explosive ramp turns, or by just outvaluing everybody else at the table. Bygone Colossus is a cool new card from Edge of Eternities. It's a 9 mana 9/9, but you can warp it for 3. So if it's on the battlefield, I pay 3 for its warp cost. Normally I would have to exile it at the beginning of the next end step, but if I sacrifice it to Venom, it doesn't matter that I warped it for 3. Its mana value is 9, so I'll draw 9 cards. And I was going to exile it anyways, so I needed it out of here. So we can outvalue with our big creatures like that. Stuff like Phytotitan has been very powerful. I just added this in recently. It's a 6 mana 7/2. When it dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of his or her next upkeep. Normally it's not that good. I mean, whatever, you get a guy that kind of has some retention, but he's going to enter taps next turn. Not very good. But Venom doesn't care if they're tapped or not. He's going to sacrifice them. He's going to draw a bunch of cards. So if I play that guy, what's his name? Fierce Empath for 3. Search my deck for a creature with mana value 6 or less. Find Phytotitan. Put Phytotitan onto the battlefield. As long as I can keep Venom alive and swinging, I can draw 6 cards a turn and put something with 6 mana or less onto the battlefield from my hand. So that could be Zayator the Incinerator. It gets a lot of value. That could be Corvold. I think it costs 6. I just had him. Maybe I scooped him up. And then the main way that this deck gets trumped is that Venom really needs to stay alive most of the time. But if he doesn't stay alive, it's not the end of the world, because there should be enough mana engines. We have Deathrite Shaman, Llanowar Elves, Ignoble Hierarch, Culling Ritual, all of our treasure stuff. Cycle of Renewal is a fun avatar card because you get to sacrifice a land, getting any sacrifice trigger in Jund, but you also get to search for 2 more basic lands. So, Cycle of Renewal, we play that at instant speed. That would trigger Corvold. Whenever something gets sacrificed, put a counter on Corvold. But it would also trigger our Gitrog monster, wherever he is. That whenever a land card would enter the battlefield, you get a draw card. So just a really fast instant that I have several things that I could benefit from. So we're basically trying to outvalue our opponent. If we have Corvold on the battlefield, for example, we can cast a spell like Rain of Filth, which lets us sacrifice all of our lands for a swamp each. It says each land you have has sacrifice at a swamp until end of turn. So not only could I get a bunch of mana from this to maybe recast my Venom, but every land that I sacrifice puts a counter on Corvold and I draw another card. So really quickly, Corvold can become quite big, very big. Zayator the Incinerator is another one. At the beginning of your end step, you may sack another creature. When you do, he deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens. So if I have a creature that, like Phytotitan, its mana value is less than its power, I could sacrifice it to Zayatora to not only create 3 treasure tokens, which is really what I'm concerned about, but then I get to do 7 damage to any target. Which is good for cards like Goldspan Dragon, which are in this deck, that let trophies tap for 2 more mana, or Professional Facebreaker, that as long as we have treasures, we can, kind of sift through our library by exiling all that stuff. There he is, Goldspan Dragon. Treasures you control have tap and sack. Add 2 mana of any one color. So we're just trying to get value. We're getting value. Cards like Cultivator Colossus are in this deck too. You can ramp up really fast with Cultivator Colossus. Put a ton of lands on the battlefield. Excuse me. Put a ton of lands on the battlefield. And then swing with a really, really big guy with trample. Is awesome. Worst case scenario, I put a bunch of lands on the battlefield and I sacrifice him to Venom to draw 7 cards. So we're constantly churning and churning and churning. So let's look at maybe some quick hands. We're going to try and get to 6 mana by turn 2 or 3. I don't remember if in its current state, if it's possible to get 6 in 2 turns. I mean, anything is possible, right? I purposely dropped that Soul Ring. I had to show you guys that I had the Warhammer Soul Ring in this deck. This deck is, for me, if you've watched some of my other videos and you've seen kind of the other decks that I have in my list, this deck is arguably not my best deck. Like, I wouldn't be bringing this to a competitive bracket 4, casually competitive playstyle, but it would be. It's very fun, is what I'll say. It's very fun. So I've got a hand with a lot of land. Arcane Signet, Wishclaw Talisman. What can we do with this? I mean, we could turn 2 Wishclaw if we're playing at a slow table. Drew a Lightning Greaves. Let's play an Exotic Orchard our first turn and pass. And then our second turn, we get Dark Ritual. Okay, so we're good. I'll play a Forest. I'll tap these 2 for an Arcane Signet, I think. And then pass. We could get really greedy. Nah. Well, why not? We could tap Arcane Signet for a Dark Ritual, and then use that to cast the Wishclaw and activate it. I think I want to search my library for some kind of ramp. Some kind of ramp spell. What kind of ramp spell do we want? Something like Kodama's Reach could be really good. Sowing Mycospawn, any of our creatures might be good. Ignoble Hierarch is fun because we get the Exalted trigger, knowing that we want to attack with Venom, is what I was working on saying. So let's just say that we get something really simple. I mean, we burned our Dark Ritual and used our Wishclaw, but let's get our Solemn Simulacrum, knowing that we'll be able to use it next turn. Give my Wishclaw away to somebody. Come back around to me. I will be drawing for a Buried Alive. That is very good in this deck. Buried Alive. Search your library for up to 3 Search your library for up to 3 creature cards. Put them onto your graveyard and then shuffle. I think, I took Bloodghast out of this deck, but Bloodghast is an awesome pick for Buried Alive. We can also go get Squee the Immortal but we're going to pass on that for now. Let's tap for 4 and play a Solemn Simulacrum. We're going to search our library for basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped. So we're already looking at Venom next turn. I think we're on turn 3. So we're looking at a turn 4 Venom. It's a little slower than I would like, but we're also going to be able to attack with him right away and sacrifice our Solemn Simulacrum for some value. So we pass with a 2/2 blocker up. Next turn, we'll untap and we'll draw. Get a Simian Spirit Guide. That's good for some extra mana. We'll play our Mountain for a turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have green, black, and red. We'll cast Venom. 5/5 Menace, Trample, Haste. I can immediately swing with him, so I'm gonna attack somebody, whoever has the smallest blocker, I suppose. So attack with Venom. I get a trigger. I will sacrifice Solemn Simulacrum. When he dies, I will draw a card. I get a Mayhem Devil. Then I will resolve Venom's trigger. When I sacrifice him, I will draw cards equal to his mana value. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I will put a permanent with mana value 4 or less from my hand onto the battlefield. So Mayhem Devil could be good here as kind of some sacrificial removal. I could Eternal Witness back my Simulacrum, but I don't really want to do that. I think we'll cast a Mayhem Devil. And then combat 5/5 Menace, Trample, Haste as somebody. Pass back around to my turn. We'll untap. Mayhem Devil is very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, I need to discard down. I will discard. I already have Lightning Greaves, so I'll discard my Swiftfoot Boots. Pass back around to me. Untap. Draw. I get a Doomsday. Doomsday is another one of my favorite cards. I'm trying it out in this deck. I don't know if it will be that good. It's kind of a last minute end all be all. So let's play our Swamp for turn. It's a little unfortunate that we haven't gotten any big guys yet. Now would be a good time, I think, to Buried Alive. It could also be a good time to play Psychosis Crawler, just to draw some cards and sack some stuff. Let's try to do a Buried Alive. So let's tap for 3 and cast a Buried Alive. We're going to search our library for 3 creature cards, put them in the graveyard and shuffle. So we cut right to Squeeze. Squeeze going to go in the graveyard. I know that I have an Eternal Witness, so I want to get something that will give us some value, something I can cheat out. Shadow of Mortality, it's a little early in the game. Let's assume that I haven't lost 13 life yet. Warren Soul Trader could be good. Combos really well with our token creating stuff. Zayatora would be really good at this time. Crick might be really good. So let's put Crick into the graveyard. And we need one more. We're going to pick Anger. As long as Anger is in the graveyard and I control a mountain, which I do, creatures I control have haste. Put Buried Alive into the graveyard once it resolves. And then I will tap that 3 and cast the Eternal Witness. When it enters, return target creature from my graveyard to my hand. I'll return Crick. Put him in my hand. And then let's... I don't have enough to cast Crick. So next turn we'll be able to get some good value off of that. Enter combat. I'll swing with Venom. sacrificing the Eternal Witness. Resolve that trigger. Well, first, I sacrifice it. Mayhem Devil goes on the stack. I will ping somebody for a damage. Or take out a creature. I'll draw 3 cards. I draw a Culling Ritual, a Forest, and a Chord of Calling. And then I'll put something with 3 mana value or less. Let's do Lightning Greaves. And we can equip that for 0. Now he has Shroud. It's pretty good. Pass my turn. Let's assume the turn comes back around to me. Draw a card. Drew Elves of Deep Shadow. At this point, I think it's appropriate to cast Crick. So Crick, we will pay 4 for and lose 6 life. And then he says for each black and a cost, you may pay 2 life rather than pay that mana. So really, funnily enough, we could pay 6 mana to cast a Doomsday and exile our whole library. Let me explain what this says in case people have never seen this card. So this says search your library and graveyard for 5 cards and exile the rest. Put the chosen cards on top of your library in any order. You lose half your life rounded up. So interestingly enough, we could pick our 5 cards, exile everything else, put these 5 cards in our deck, and then enter combat, attack with Venom, sacrifice Crick, trigger on Mayhem Devil, ping somebody for a damage, draw 7 cards, which we only have 5, and then we could lose the game immediately. So that's pretty interesting. That's a fun thing that you can do. So that's just a little glimpse into what Venom is about. Yeah, a lot of people talk about Green Goblin for this set. I think Green Goblin's fine. There's nothing wrong with Green Goblin, but I do think that Venom is much more fun. And if you were just looking for something that churns and you draw a bunch of cards and you put a lot of value on the board, you get some kind of crazy board states with Venom. I'm thinking about playing him for a next play through video that I do, gameplay video. So if you made it this far, thank you very much. Let me know if you'd want to see that. If you want to see more stuff like this, leave a like and a comment. Subscribe, it really helps. And I will see you in the next deck review.